What if I told you there are 7 ordinary foods, things you could put in a grocery cart this afternoon without a single prescription, that quietly work on the exact spot where your stream loses its force? Not a supplement with a label full of promises, not a procedure. Food. The kind already sitting in most grocery stores, chosen for a reason most men never hear explained. I stood at the toilet last week and did something I hadn't done in years. I timed it. Not on purpose, really. I just noticed how long it took to finish, how the stream started strong for a second, and then seemed to lose interest in itself, tapering into almost nothing before I was even done. A large share of men over 50 notice some version of that same fading stream, and by 60 or 70, most of us have simply stopped comparing it to what it used to be, because the comparison stings. I'm 83, and I still remember exactly what my stream sounded like at 30. Loud, fast, over in 10 seconds, no thought required. What I have now took decades to arrive at, quietly, 1 year at a time, until one day I looked down and didn't recognize it. What changed it wasn't a single miracle discovery. It was 7 specific things, each one tied to a different piece of what's actually happening down there, and I'm about to walk you through every one of them. These days, my mornings don't start with a fight in the bathroom. I stand, I go, it's over in a normal amount of time, and I walk out without that lingering feeling that something got left behind. My neighbor asked me last month why I seemed less tired lately, and the honest answer was that I stopped losing the first 20 minutes of every morning to standing at the toilet, willing my own body to finish. Here's what I want to walk you through today. What's actually happening to the stream as men get older, why just age doesn't fully explain it, and 7 specific foods, real ones, sitting in most grocery stores, that research has connected to a stronger, steadier flow. Not a miracle, not an overnight fix, but specific and worth knowing. Most men assume a weaker stream is simply the plumbing wearing out, the way an old garden hose gets a little softer over the years no matter what you do. I believed that too for a long time. But plumbing doesn't explain why the stream starts strong and then fades midstream, or why it takes longer to get started at all some mornings than others. That pattern points somewhere specific, and it isn't the bladder wearing out. The truth is simpler and more mechanical than getting old. The prostate sits wrapped directly around the tube urine passes through on its way out. As it enlarges with age, which happens to some degree in most men, it presses inward on that channel from every side, the same way stepping on a garden hose chokes off the water even though the hose itself is perfectly fine. The pump isn't broken. The path is narrower than it used to be. That narrowing changes everything about how urination feels. It takes a beat longer to start because the bladder has to build up more pressure just to push through the tighter space. The stream that does come out moves slower and thinner than it should because it's being squeezed the entire way. And here's the part that surprised me most. Because the channel is narrower, the bladder often can't push everything out before the pressure drops off, so it stops early, leaving urine behind even though it feels like you're done. A bladder that never fully empties refills faster than it should. That's the piece nobody explained to me for years, and I thought the weak stream and the frequent bathroom trips were 2 separate problems. They're the same problem, showing up twice, both tracing back to a channel that's gotten too narrow to let the bladder finish its job cleanly. Once I understood that, I stopped blaming my own age for something that had an actual physical explanation, and I started paying real attention to what I put in my body, because it turns out some ordinary foods have research behind them showing they support exactly this system, the flow and the emptying, not through any dramatic transformation, but through steady, cumulative support over weeks and months. For years, one number ran my life, the PSA. It would tick up a point and I'd lie awake the whole night, certain it meant the worst, picturing the biopsy, the knife, the end of everything. Then someone finally told me the truth no doctor had. That number doesn't measure cancer. It measures your prostate. And as we age, it climbs mostly because the gland is simply enlarging, benign, swollen, and uncomfortable, not the worst. The number was scaring me half to death over something ordinary. And the prescriptions they push to shrink it? They can flatten your drive completely, soften everything, quietly take the man right out of you. I wasn't willing to trade that away. There's a gentle way to support that gland, keep it comfortable, a healthy size, without surrendering any of that. Keep getting checked every year, of course. At 83, that number doesn't own me anymore. I finally have peace. Let me show you what gave it to me in this video. And if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. The first food surprised me because it's something I'd been eating my whole life without knowing it mattered here. Fatty fish. Salmon, sardines, mackerel, a few times a week. Omega-3 fatty acids carry a general anti-inflammatory effect through the body, and researchers who study bladder and prostate comfort have pointed to that same pathway as one associated with less irritation and a calmer, lower urinary tract overall. It isn't one flashy trial with a headline number. It's a broader body of research that's built up slowly, which is exactly the kind of evidence that tends to hold up over time. The second is pumpkin seeds, and I want to be honest about this one rather than oversell it. Pumpkin seeds are rich in zinc and plant compounds called phytosterols, and they've been used traditionally for prostate and urinary comfort for a very long time. Some research on pumpkin seed products has shown meaningful improvement in symptoms. The largest single trial done on this specific seed, though, didn't find a clear advantage over placebo on its main measure. So I eat a small handful most days as one piece of a traditional, plausible habit, not as a guaranteed fix on its own, and I think that honesty matters more than a big promise would. The third is flaxseed, specifically the lignans inside it, plant compounds that showed up in a controlled study of men with prostate-related urinary symptoms, where a flaxseed lignan extract taken daily for several months was associated with real improvement in symptom scores and quality of life. I started grinding a spoonful into my oatmeal most mornings. It doesn't taste like much of anything, which honestly is part of why it's stuck as a habit. The fourth centers on a compound called beta-sitosterol, found naturally in foods like sesame seeds, pistachios, and avocado. Beta-sitosterol has been studied specifically in men with an enlarged prostate, and multiple controlled trials found it associated with improved urinary flow measures and reduced residual urine, meaning less left behind after finishing, the exact piece of the mechanism I described a moment ago. I started adding avocado to lunch a few times a week and keeping a small container of mixed seeds at my desk instead of chips. The fifth is soy, specifically the isoflavones in foods like edamame, tofu, and soy milk. A controlled study following men over a full year found that isoflavones were associated with a gradual, sustained improvement in urinary symptom scores, the kind of slow, steady change rather than anything immediate. I'm not asking you to overhaul your diet around soy. I added it maybe 3 times a week, swapping it in where I used to have something else. The sixth is cranberry, not the sugary juice, but cranberry powder specifically. A controlled study using cranberry fruit powder in men found it associated with measurable improvement in lower urinary tract symptoms, dose-dependent, meaning more of it tracked with more improvement. I take a small capsule of the powdered form most mornings now, separate from any juice, which tends to carry more sugar than benefit. The seventh is zinc more broadly, beyond what's in the pumpkin seeds, foods like oysters and cashews. Prostate tissue naturally holds a higher concentration of zinc than most other tissue in the body, and researchers have observed a general association between zinc status and prostate health, though I want to be clear this is an observed association, not a single definitive trial. I added a small handful of cashews as my afternoon snack, and oysters became an occasional dinner rather than a rare treat. None of these 7 did much on their own in the first couple of weeks. It was the combination, sustained for close to 2 months, that shifted my pattern. The fish and cranberry working on inflammation, the flaxseed and beta-sitosterol foods working on the flow and the emptying directly, the soy building slowly in the background. I almost gave up around day 10, certain nothing was different. The real change crept in around week 5, not dramatic, just a stream that finished when I expected it to. I took my grandson fishing last month, a full day out on the lake with no bathroom within walking distance, and it genuinely didn't cross my mind to worry about it beforehand, which is new for me. There was a time I would have quietly limited how much coffee I drank the whole morning before a trip like that, just in case. This time I didn't think about it once until we were already back at the dock. I think about a man named Irvin, 79, who wrote to me after an earlier video. He'd assumed his weakening stream was simply what happened to every man eventually, something you accepted the way you accept needing reading glasses. What actually moved him wasn't a promise. It was hearing that the narrowing and the weak finish were the same mechanism, not two separate mysteries. He started with the fish and the flaxseed first, since both were easy to add to meals he already made, then worked the rest in gradually over a few weeks rather than trying to change everything on day one. Irvin told me the beta-sitosterol foods surprised him most. He'd never considered avocado and pistachios as anything other than snacks. He also admitted, and I understood this completely, that part of him doubted something this ordinary could matter as much as a prescription. Reading the actual research behind each food, rather than a vague suggestion to eat healthier, was what finally moved him from skeptical to consistent. If you're on blood thinners or any prescription for your heart, blood pressure, or prostate specifically, please hear this clearly. Nothing I've described replaces your treatment, and none of these foods should ever be a reason to stop or adjust a medication on your own. Fish oil in particular can interact with certain blood thinners. Bring any of this to your own doctor first. They know your full history, and that conversation is worth having before you change anything meaningfully. Here's what I settled on: a few drops a day. And let me tell you why it works. One compound calms one signal, but a swollen prostate answers when several are calmed at once. The growth signal, the inflammation, the pressure inside it. So what I use concentrates them, working as one, the way the research actually uses them, not a single ingredient pretending to be enough. A gland that stays comfortable and a healthy size, fewer trips, and the quiet of no longer fearing that number. It leaves the man fully intact, none of that flattening the prescriptions can do. It's linked right under this video, go look for yourself. It won't replace your doctor or your yearly check. It supports the biology right alongside them. I'm 83, and that number doesn't own me anymore. What I want you to walk away with is this. A weaker stream past 60 isn't simply the body wearing out with no explanation behind it. It's the prostate narrowing the channel and a bladder that stops emptying fully because of it, one mechanism showing up as two frustrations. And there are specific, ordinary foods that research has connected to supporting exactly that system, not through some dramatic transformation, but through steady, patient support alongside whatever your doctor already has you doing. I think about all the mornings I spent standing at the toilet, willing my own body to finish faster, never telling anyone how long it actually took. There's a particular kind of quiet a man carries around something like that, not because it's dangerous, but because it feels too small and too embarrassing to bring up out loud. I think about the man I was at 75, timing my own bathroom trips without meaning to. And I think about the man I am now, who stands at the toilet, finishes, and walks away without a second thought about it, because most mornings, there's nothing left to think about. It's a small thing to most people. To me, past 80, it's proof that this body still responds when you finally give it what it's actually asking for. If you've ever caught yourself comparing your stream today to the one you had decades ago, tell me in the comments how long you've noticed the change. I read every one of them myself. And if an explanation like this one, specific and grounded instead of vague, is useful to you, go ahead and subscribe. There's more of this every week, and it's here for exactly the men who've been quietly wondering about it.